Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at Your Overseas Home, this Your Overseas Home webinar all about your viewing trip to Italy. My name is Christopher Nye, and I am the senior editor of all content at Your Overseas Home and also Property Guides. And today I will be discussing with Corrado Biaggi from Tuscan Homes, which I hope I've pronounced your name right.
Perfect.
How you should prepare for your viewing trip to Italy. It's great to have you all here today, whether you're with us live or catching up on demand. And we're just here to help you realize your dream to own a property in Italy. Now, today's session will be a maximum of 45 minutes. And for those listening in live, do please put your questions to Corrado. If you wish to ask anything, just type your query into the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen. If you need a reminder of anything discussed today or want to share this with family or friends who might be thinking of buying in Italy, a replay will be available on the Your Overseas Home website to watch at your leisure. So I am delighted to be joined by Corrado from Tuscan Homes. So I think probably let's get started. And let's just get start off by if you could explain where you are and what you do, Corrado.
Perfect. So hello, everybody. As mentioned by Chris, I'm Corrado, and Tuscan Homes, we started 33 years ago in an area just north of Lucca. We specialize in this area as this is where our family was from. And we started actually as the first estate agency within this area. At the time, there wasn't anyone who was offering expertise within the buying and selling of properties. And then we also moved into the property management in terms of construction as well for people who were looking more of a project. So over the past 33 years, we've been helping people from all over the world, the UK as well, absolutely, to help them to realize their dream and to come over in Tuscany and live the dolce vita. Regarding where the area which we specialize in, as mentioned, it is north of Lucca. The area has actually been on the BBC as well, which has been talked about as the untouched Tuscany. So it is still very quaint, and it is still very real in terms of most of the people here are very much locals, and we don't have that mass tourism that perhaps you might see in and around the areas such as Florence, Siena, or San Gimignano, which a lot of people absolutely love. And regarding the buying process and coming to Italy, so there's a couple of things which I think are very, very important. So I think the first thing to kind of jot down is very much to understand what you're really looking for within a property and what you're looking for to gain from this experience within living in Italy full time, or also as a holiday home. Whether it's a country house with a pool just a bit further out from a town, or a property within a historic centre, and live and breathe, every day the kind of Tuscan feel, and everybody saying hello to each other, walking down and getting your fresh bread, and getting your daily groceries down in the town. It's very important also, I think, to actually, after you understand what you're specifically looking for, I think it's really, really important to understand the area that you're looking into. Tuscany is quite a big region, and it can give you very different things. For example, in the Lucca area where I'm based in Barga, we are an hour away from Lucca, we are an hour away from the airport from Pisa, and we're an hour and a half from Florence, and we're also an hour away from the beach and an hour away from skiing. A lot of people do enjoy having these possibilities, just in an hour's time to go into all of these activities, whether it's going to museums, or be it having a day trip to the beach in Viareggio and Forte dei Marmi. Other areas such as Florence are also very interesting. You've got the Chianti area, which is very famous for its wines, and lots and lots of people do buy there for the untouched nature and to really get involved within the wine culture of Tuscany. Regarding how the buying process and how you should start searching, I think that a preliminary understanding of your surrounding areas and what towns can give you, whether it has, an airport, shops, a hospital, a pharmacy, and banks, just for your daily needs is always important. Or as much as if the next bigger town along, 10-15 minute drive will be able to give all those amenities to you. And after we have kind of understood the area and you're fallen in love with it, I think that definitely going down and seeing it for yourselves, after some research online, seeing it for yourselves and getting a real feel for it, perhaps for a long weekend or even for a week as you're searching for properties.
So I went offline there for a moment. I didn't cause too much of a panic, but I'm back. The technology's worked. Okay. Shall we? Let's go back. Thanks for filling in. Should we go back and just work out? So, how far in advance should clients start preparing for their viewing trips? What's the first thing you should do when you decided that we're going to do this?
So I think that the first thing is to really understand what you are looking for within a property, because what a lot of the times people come over with, let's say with a dream of searching for something, but they're quite unsure. So I think that perhaps having a bit more of a direction towards it, and which can change, which we've seen change many times. Some people perhaps are looking for a villa on the outskirts and then end up buying something within the town because it's just a complete different living experience once you're here, being able to walk everywhere. And I think in terms of preparation in advance, I think that, at least a month in advance, just so you can get all your flights sorted, your accommodation, and also get timings with the agents, just because, especially during the summer and spring and summer months, it can get very busy. And the busier it is, usually there's less availability for hotels or Airbnbs, and it does become a bit expensive also, on your wallet. So because of that, a bit more preparation and a bit more hindsight will definitely give you the best experience, and also the cheaper options for you to be able to do it a bit more economically rather than doing everything last minute.
There's a question just coming from Gail. She's asking, when is the best time of year to do a viewing trip? She's traveling to Italy in June and July, but that feels like high summer, doesn't it?
That's absolutely the height of summer. I think that the best time is probably after, from February onwards, February, March, and April. The reason I say that is because if that is the time that, and if during that time you are able to find something which you really, really like, and you are able to kind of make an offer, do all the due diligence, and get to the notary, and that you're in time in there for summer, and you can move in, for July and August, and actually start enjoying the property in the height of summer and make the most of it straight away during that year. And that's kind of my suggestion. That said, the weather is not going to be as good as it would be, June, July, August, even May. Today's it's 25 degrees, and it's an absolutely beautiful day. But if you like a property when it's raining, you're going to love it when it's sunny.
So so I hope you all got your phones out and are frantically looking through EasyJet to find a flight to come out over the next month. Okay, I'll sort of feed in the reader question, the viewer questions as we go on. But let's come back to the preparing for your viewing.
I can't hear you, Chris.
Oh.
Much better.
Okay, so let's go back to the practicalities of planning your viewing trip. So, how long do you think you should spend on a viewing trip?
So, on a viewing trip, I think that it's not set in stone. It's actually quite hard because for every person it's different. What we see is that sometimes people who come over, as mentioned before, and are looking for something, and then they do switch. They switch their focus as they're here. So perhaps sometimes rather than just coming for 2 days, having an extra third day of viewings is really, really, really important. That said, we've been with people which the first property that we went in with them, they fell in love, it was absolutely perfect, and that's all they needed. It's not usually as easy as that. It does take a bit of time. But I do think that at least a couple of days, just to give you a bit more time of kind of settling in, getting a feel for the area is definitely needed. And at the same time, I don't think that more than 4, maximum 5 properties a day is really something that you want to do. The reason behind that is it can be quite confusing, and seeing, you're seeing 5 kitchens, 5 living rooms, umpteen bedrooms, and it can get really, really confusing for someone to place everything back to the right property. So to avoid that, we usually try and keep it a maximum of 5 properties per day per client, just so that we don't confuse anything, and that we can just concentrate on what we've seen and get all the questions on those properties. At the same time, whilst you're there, it's definitely really, really helpful to come with, with some pre-prepared questions, perhaps, that you might have per property. And usually, for example, we give a booklet on every property so that you have all the details. And then on that, you can also jot down any questions and any answers that I might have given you that you might have on that property, just so that we can just nail down and not get anything confused with anything else.
Okay. Do you reckon it's best to come at a weekend, or over a weekend, or during the week? Yes, it depends when the agent is working.
It completely depends. So I work 6 to 7 days a week, and just depends on how. So this weekend, for example, I was working both Saturday and Sunday, and Monday was a bank holiday, thankfully, so I had that day off. But it really just depends. It's really just what is kind of more suitable for the buyers as well. And a weekend is a bit easier. But I would really suggest to perhaps get a flight over on a Thursday evening, so that you do have all of Friday and all of Saturday, and then on the Sunday, get the flight back home, just so you get 2 full days of getting the experience, touring the area, and also getting to those 8 to 10 properties, as I mentioned before.
Now, do they need to bring any paperwork with them when they come out on a viewing trip?
So any paperwork, I think that more than paperwork, it's more of just pen and paper, just to jot down anything that you need, because all the paperwork for the property is usually supplied by the agents, such as myself, just so that, whether it's a floor plan, perhaps is a map of the land which shows you all the boundaries of it, especially on properties which perhaps have, an acre of land. It's always good to have something on paper that you can actually see, because we will not always go right to the edge and do all the perimeter of it, because sometimes it might be woods, or it might be not as accessible as other areas. In terms of paperwork to come over, I think that your passport and national insurance number is always very good to bring with you, just because if we do want to move forwards with anything, with those in hand, we can start the process of getting your Italian fiscal code, which you need to open a bank account and also to purchase a property. And if you have all of that at hand, we can have that, and you can give us a proxy to go and collect it for you.
Excellent. Okay. Now, one of the great things about doing virtual webinars, these talks online, is that we get people from all over the world. And we've got Bob from the US.
Okay.
And Bob has asked, well, firstly, this is more about visas, but what is the longest period of time we can stay in the property before returning to the USA?
So these are slightly changing. So, for example, from the US, we've got some clients right here, right now, which usually do about three months at a time. And usually, if you want to stay any longer, for a longer period of time, what we would need to do is we would need to apply for a permesso di soggiorno, which basically means that as an immigrant, that you have a status for 1 year to stay in the property as long as you wish. So we have a client in Lucca who purchased through us, who we did all that paperwork for her, and we did it for 3 years or 4 years straight. And then afterwards, you have one which lasts 10 years. And basically she comes, for 6 months, she does a lot of painting, she does a lot of touring, she does various arts classes, whilst other people which don't need that, they just kind of dart in and out of the properties as they wish throughout the year. It is actually something which we've had more of let's say, issue with since Brexit for our UK clients. The reason behind that is beforehand, having been in the EU, they could just come for as long as they wish and just enjoy the property, whether it was 1 year or 6 months. Right now, the maximum you can stay in for UK clients or nationals is 90 days. So that has been a bit of a switch for people which I bought years ago. But usually, most people just come, for 1 month, 2 months, or just a lot of long weekends. So it's really a bigger issue for a small percentage of people, and we can caveat that with if you wish to stay longer, with the permesso di soggiorno, as we've done with our American clients.
Okay. Now, Bob has asked another question, and I guess this comes down to, from my not great knowledge of American property, you have one agent can get any property off the multiple listing system. What happens in Italy if can you look at any property, or do you have to have a different agent for each different property?
So it really depends. So some properties are listed with multiple agents, while others are exclusive to a specific agent. Some clients do prefer to use various agents, for certain properties that perhaps they are exclusive to them, whilst others, after they have built a rapport that they and trust with a specific agent, they actually prefer to just stick with that person, and then that anything which does come up, which perhaps the agent doesn't have, they will be able to go and view with them. And after having that rapport, you have one single person who you can use as a pivot, and that they will gain anything else that, any other property that you'd like to see or wish to see, and they will be able to do all of that work for you, so that it takes away all of the work of emailing, 5, 6 agents, and having to deal with lots of different people. You just deal with one person, you go directly, and they'll be able to get all the information for you. They'll be able to sort out all of your viewings, etc., just sending an email to one person.
Great. Okay. Now we've got now Lucky Emma is coming over for 3 weeks in mid-July, traveling in her motorhome. She hasn't booked any viewing trips, any viewings yet. How much notice does she need to give an agent to view a property?
So it depends on the weeks for myself as well. Sometimes I'm able to just sneak people in, just people who are walking by and they want to view our property, just walking by the office. I'm able to accommodate them straight away. But I would say that a week in advance is usually the best, or at least a couple of working days. Just because if we can, we will move things around to try and accommodate anyone who's here for a short period of time. But sometimes that just isn't possible. So the more notice that we do have is always better. I think 3 working days is usually very doable, because if we can move things around, it gives us enough notice to to change things around with other clients or other views that we may have.
Okay, here's a question from Julian that very much I can relate to. He's interested in doing a project in Tuscany, but as I'm finding in Britain, you can't find a builder for love nor money. How busy are builders, plumbers, electricians at the moment in your area?
So in Italy, there's a thing called eco bonus on at the moment, where basically it's kind of the insulate Britain kind of thing that you had, which we've already started. So the government has given grants for people to refurbish properties to make them more energy efficient. So because of these grants, lots of people are actually very, very busy, and even the surveyors which actually look after the whole project. It's not hard to find builders, but the hardest part is to get them on the job on the day, and to make sure that things that are meant to be getting done are actually getting done. So in the office, we actually have a project management sector, which Michael heads up within our office. And from there, we are on the building sites basically every day. We chase people up, because sometimes they might forget or something's not there. And in Italy, the biggest problem is that people are not great in keeping contact and letting you know what things are. So we actually started this project management side of it to give a bit more of tranquility to all of our clients, because obviously not being here, they are not able to manage it themselves, and they want, they want to know that things are coming along, that things are getting done in the right time frame, so that when they come over, perhaps in the summer, everything has been done, and there's no nasty surprises at the end of it. That the kitchen isn't finished or the bathroom's not here, etc., etc. So it's mostly just about keeping on top of things, and that's why we actually started it ourselves as well, because it can be hard to get people on time doing what they're supposed to, as I'm guessing it is in the UK as well. We have a team which we use for various jobs depending on the size of them. So if it's just changing a boiler, we've got someone which is a smaller business who is able to do it for us, which is slightly cheaper than perhaps redoing like all the heating system, or getting it's cheaper than getting a bigger business, which they will have to do the whole heating system, change the boiler, a couple of new bathrooms, etc., etc. So depending on the size of the job, we use the right person for it. And exactly the same as building, and whether it's a new roof or it's just retiling, we just use different people for the job, just depending who's right.
Okay, a follow-up from Gail, and perhaps we didn't explain properly, but so she's coming in June and July. You can still view then. It isn't that you can't view. It's just that it's the weather's a bit hot, so she can still come out in June and July and view properties. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So she can just come out, and as she's coming in a motorhome, she will probably be touring around. So I think that will also give her a very good opportunity to look at various areas and be like, and when she feels comfortable, and feels, that she's arrived in the right place, you feel kind of like the aura and the vibe of an area. I think that from there she can kind of just concentrate there, and a motorhome I think is a great way to kind of tour Tuscany and find the right place for you.
I think that was different people, but they're still coming out in July. What about August? Is it like France and everyone kinds of goes to the beach in August?
Yeah. So in August we have a holiday which is called Ferragosto, where basically most of the big businesses go on holiday for about 2 weeks, and everything more or less shuts down. So usually in August is an absolute nightmare to be able to find a notary who will actually, where we can go to actually sign the final contract. August is never a very good time for finishing, for concluding, let's say, the sale process. And as much as work on the property will be put slightly on hold because everybody, most people are on holiday. I usually take my holidays in November, so I'll be here to view properties if you need. Things do go to a bit of a standstill during that time. Absolutely.
Okay, another one from Bob. We would like to lock in the euro.
I can't hear you particularly well, Chris.
Okay, sorry, I'll speak up. Bob saying we would like to lock in the euro at its current value to the dollar.
Okay.
Can you help us with this? I don't blame you, Bob. If you're in the US, you've got a fantastic dollar rate at the moment. I can answer this myself actually, because we do work with Smart Currency Exchange, and they will offer you a forward contract that will lock your rate in for the next year, and I would definitely do that if possible. And we'll give you this Smart Currency Exchange's details later. One from Stephen: if a purchase falls through, what costs should you expect to incur at the various stages of the process? Okay,
so it depends what. Okay, it's a multifaceted answer from me. Because we need to also understand why the sale has fallen through. So let's say that the sale has fallen through because you are no longer interested. Usually what happens then is that you lose if you've signed a preliminary contract, what happens is that you lose your deposit. If the sale of the property has fallen through because perhaps the due diligence has found some inconsistencies and within the paperwork and the property, usually we can either rectify that, and the owner looks to rectify the whatever needs to be done through the council and the geometry. And if perhaps that cannot be done, what happens is that there's no fees for anyone. You get your check back for your deposit, and everybody goes their separate ways. So it really just depends on what happens and why. whilst if perhaps the buyer pulls out because somebody made a higher offer, what happens is that, at least what we do to counteract this, is that we actually put in the preliminary contract that if the buyer pulls out, you actually get double the deposit back. So that means that the offer needs to be very, very, very substantially more, because otherwise there's no, it's not worth it for them to pull out from that particular purchase contract.
Okay. Now we've got a question from Julia. What is the property market in Tuscany like right now? How much room for negotiation is there?
It completely depends. It completely depends where you are. It completely depends where you are. The market is actually quite buoyant. In general, we say that there's about 10%, while some properties that's the fixed price and we're not moving. It really just depends. Some areas, perhaps in the more, let's say, rural areas, there's slightly more wiggle room just because they are, let's say, less, they're less popular. Perhaps in a small town or even a village or a hamlet where there's 10, 20 people living there, usually got a little bit more wiggle room there, just because it's not everybody goes every day to buy there, perhaps. But in general, about 10% is what you can look for. But there are some better deals to be had if somebody tries to be a bit cheekier with an offer. It really just depends on the situation of the seller. If they're looking for a quick sale, or if perhaps they're even happy to just sit on it and wait for somebody else to make a higher offer for them. It's on a case-by-case basis, unfortunately, on that.
Okay. Someone has asked if you cover other areas of Italy. Do you do Liguria, for example?
So we actually don't. So we actually specialize in this area. We were thinking of expanding. It's a family business. My parents started it, and they were thinking of expanding it years ago. But looking for people to open a new office, we saw that we would be losing the actual quality of service that we actually give and that we want to give to our clients. So we actually went against that. But what we do is that we have various people which we work with, other agents, and which we have a very good rapport with. We know how they work, and we know that they're not cowboys. So we're very, very comfortable to work with them. We've got some people, further down in Tuscany. We've got some people in Liguria. We've got people in the Pisa area and in Florence. And we've got someone in Sicily as well. And, it's just things which we manage and we try and find, just because some clients, it might not be right for them here, and they're looking for someone who works just like us and has the same work ethos. And because of that, they do always ask for suggestions of someone that we might know. So that is what we do. And usually when that happens, we kind of make the introduction, we help you throughout the process, and we kind of do both of us kind of help you through the process, both myself and perhaps the other agent will help you going forwards with that. But we are specialized in this area.
So if people want to buy in Liguria or Lake Como or anywhere else, they can perhaps contact you, and you'll have a contact details of someone who you recommend.
That's not a problem.
Or you can persuade them to buy in your fantastic area instead. Okay. One from Emma again. What is building and planning control like to deal with on properties that need a restoration?
Again, it depends what needs to be done, and it depends on what type of property it is. So, for example, for anything which is a load-bearing wall, we will need a much more substantial kind of report by the geometer and the local civil engineer, because you're actually changing the construction of the property and actually the structure of it. So usually for that, it's a much bigger job to do, and it's a lot more expensive. For other things, putting in a new kitchen is not a problem. Putting in new bathrooms is kind of standard. Moving kind of small walls is not a problem, as long as they're not load bearing. All you need to do is do the planning permission for it, so that in the future, when you're actually selling, what's on paper actually is the same as what's there physically and on the property. There usually is it is a bit more tricky in the historic centers, just because we try and preserve them as they are. So, for example, in my town here in Barga, you're not allowed to put any solar panels or anything else on the roof, because otherwise, when you're above at the main church looking down from the Duomo, you wouldn't see all the nice kind of like cobbled and terracotta roofs. All you'd see is solar panels. And you're not allowed to add any balconies or anything else because you're changing the actual shape and formation of the actual town, which I think is completely correct. My town is about 1,000 years old. So because of that, well, the first time it was spoken about in a book was about 1,000 years old. So they try and preserve it as much as possible because that's what people come to see. The beautiful old cobble streets and the historic buildings.
But in general, post-pandemic, are processes like notaries and lawyers and planning officials and all those people, are things working pretty well at the moment, or are we still like, away from times longer?
In Italy, we actually don't use lawyers. So a lawyer is not someone which, compared to the UK, that we use. So here, the people which are involved is your notary. You would need a translator, the geometra, so a surveyor, and the agent. So those are the kind of like the four main figures that you would use. The notary does the job of officiating everything because he's actually a government official, and he would do kind of like all the lawyer kind of side of it. So because that is not actually someone which we would use. If you'd like to use a lawyer, they will take your money and they'll be very happy to do so. So that's not a problem, but it's not something which is actually needed or that we've ever used. Some people prefer to do so just because that's what they're used to, and it's absolutely fine. Regarding the process, everything is slightly slower because things we've had a bit of a log of things to deal with. The slowest things to actually deal with are the due diligence in the council, because the councils, not all of them are, not everybody in the council is actually working there full time again. They're working part time from home and part time in the office, and something which would have taken a week to get an appointment, sometimes it can take 4 weeks to do. So that is kind of like the main issue which we're finding, and the process is slower. But this year we've sold, we've had everything sorted and signed within a month, as much other things that we're dealing with for the past 6 months. It just really depends.
Okay. So if you came out on a viewing trip sort of this month in May, when might one reasonably expect to be in by?
So if you're a cash buyer, without a mortgage, I would assume that within 2 to 3 months, if everything kind of checks out and is quite straightforward, you should be in. As mentioned before, we've done it in a month, because as a foreigner, it can take slightly longer, just because we need to get the paperwork done and everything else, such as your codice fiscale, as mentioned before, open a bank account for you, which can take a bit longer. But usually we do that as the due diligence is getting done. So we try and do everything as together, just so we don't waste any time. The due diligence, something which used to take 2 weeks, can take up to 2 months. So that is the main, kind of problem of timings which we might incur going forwards. But for the rest, it's fairly straightforward, to be perfectly honest. I think within 2 to 3 months, after you've seen a property, made an offer, I'd expect you to move in, between 8 to 12 weeks.
Right, so it could be in before August. Lander has asked, is there a difference in buying real estate for commercial commercial or residential properties? So, for example, if she was thinking of doing a B&B kind of business, would that be a whole different process or the same?
So the process would actually be different after the purchase, because you would need to register with the council that you are an actual business, and then from that you would have to pay tax on it, etc. So that is kind of like the main difference from it, but the purchase process is more or less exactly the same. And we actually have a couple for sale at the moment. The process is exactly the same. Some people, we've actually sold one recently, which then they just wanted to use as a family home. So, they've just stopped doing the Airbnb, the B&B kind of part of it. But that is actually an issue which comes afterwards, which you just need to register with the council, because it's got some costs in it. We've got the Tassa di Soggiorno now on as well, which is a small fee per day for foreigners to come over, which then, that goes back to the council as well, which you need to collect. So it's mostly bureaucracy afterwards, just like starting any business, whether it's in the UK or in the US or France or anywhere else.
Okay. So leading off from that, I know we can't just come out and work in Italy. But what about running a business? Running a, presumably, we got so many Italian restaurants in Britain. Presumably, most of them originated with someone coming from Italy and opening a restaurant. What about the unlikely event that somebody wants to come out to Italy and open I don't know, some kind of business of their own? Can one do that?
Yeah, that's not a problem. So the best thing to do there, I'm not actually up to date with all of the new laws because things have changed due to Brexit. So what I would probably suggest is that to get in contact with an accountant, and then from there they'll be able to direct you in both the best way and best way to open the business, whether it's a SLR, SLRS, or to be a sole trader, una partita IVA, or whatever it is, just so you have the best tax regime for whatever you're looking to do. I would probably not, I would say don't do it because the tax regimes in Italy are absolutely crazy, but the taxation here is very, very high. But if you're looking to open a B&B, then I would speak to an accountant. They'll be able to direct you in what sort of business and what regime to actually open in, so that you're paying the less tax and it's actually the most straightforward thing for you. And that would be my suggestion there.
Okay. Sticking with residential property, then, is there any difference between buying a property in the country, in the countryside? Are there special rules that apply there?
I can't hear you too well there, Chris.
How about properties in the countryside?
Okay.
Is there an issue with buying properties in the countryside? Things like, I don't know, do you have to offer the property to the neighbouring farmer as you do in some countries first?
So no. So usually what happens there is that for properties in the countryside, we actually had an issue like this. That's an issue. I had this something like this very similar very recently. So basically, agricultural land and woodland. Basically, what happens is that when you do sell a property, you also need to give the right to the next door neighbor to see if they would like to buy it. But usually we're talking, hectares of stuff, and most of it, we've never had somebody be like, yes, I want to take it off you. It's always been very smooth because it's people which will have hectares themselves, and acres of stuff, and it's never really been an issue. But they do kind of have like right of first refusal, especially if it's the same type of land, agricultural or woodland, etc. But it's never really been the case that somebody says like, yeah, I'll take the whole lot off you, because there's got tax on it, and usually the people around have like loads of it, so we've never really had an issue with it. But with properties, we've not had that as of yet. We've never encountered it.
A question from Roger. When using just a notary and not an attorney or a lawyer, how can you be certain that the property has been constructed fully to code before you pay a deposit?
So what happens is that when you sign a preliminary contract, usually you give a check for the deposit. We usually keep a hold of the check, and nobody cashes it in until we're sure and we're certain that we're happy with the property. So before we go to the notary, we hire a surveyor, which is the geometer, to do all of the due diligence, so that they will check in the council and for all the paperwork, and go and look at the property to make sure that everything that's being constructed is actually correct on paper, just as it is there in real life, physically. So because of that, we do kind of caveat it that way. And then the notary also looks, on the day and on the morning to make sure that there's no liens or anything else on the property, because somebody could take it out, that same morning, before you purchase the property, and you'd be looking to get into that. But the notary does all of that the morning and on the day that you're buying, to make sure that everything that you're buying is correct and is lien free, etc., and that there are no problems. And this is also written on the contract itself, that the property will be free of any liens, loans, etc., just to make sure.
Great. Okay. One from Matthew. I've read on some websites that you have to pay a fee at the time of putting in an offer on a property. Is that correct? And if so, if the offer is rejected, what happens to the money?
Okay, I'm not sure in what type of fee.
Well,
Is
it
that
doesn't say.
related?
It doesn't say, but so what you take us through the process of making an offer.
So the process throughout making an offer usually goes to after you made an offer and it's been accepted. What we do is that we get all the documentation so that we can start the preliminary contract. The preliminary contract is very useful because it binds both parties to the property, to both the purchase and selling the property. In the preliminary contract, it will identify both parties, the property with all the dati catastale, all the cadastral data, so that the property is identified properly with all the numbers and sectors, etc., that's positioned within the town. And it will define the price and the costs. It will define the price of the final payment in front of the notary. It will define also the deposit. At the same time, it will also give you the time frame into which the sale will need to happen. From this, it kind of helps you to go forwards and to be sure that nobody else is going to, pinch the property underneath your nose. And at the same time, it kind of gives you peace of mind to going forwards, and that you can start your due diligence process to make sure that you're buying a property which has been built correctly and that all the walls are where they're meant to be, and things have been built randomly within it, during the years. So that's what happens between the preliminary contract and the final sales contract. After the due diligence is finished, we will make a call to the notary. We will schedule a date. If you don't speak Italian, you will need a translator, which will translate the final contract both in Italian and English for you, because the notary will not let you sign anything unless they are happy that you understand completely what's in front of you, what you're reading, or what's being read to you.
Okay. Now we're nearing the end. Let me just so a couple of questions we want to get answered. Do customers need proof of funds before they come on a trip?
So that is always a good idea to have. Realistically, an agent usually qualifies the client beforehand. So they will ask if you're looking to buy with a mortgage or without, and at the same time at the preliminary contract, we will need to write in where the funds are also coming from, which is the anti-money laundering law. So because of that, we usually know what's going on before the final sale. At the same time, people usually don't come and view properties for a million euros when they have 100 grand to spend, because it's counterproductive both for themselves and nobody's going anywhere with that. So everybody's usually quite they're usually quite good with it, because otherwise everybody's just wasting their time for no reason at all. But if you do have it, it's definitely a peace of mind for the agent, going forwards.
Okay. Right. Well, now just flicking through the questions to see if there's any that we haven't asked yet. I think we just about. Oh yes, here's one. How much is buying tax?
So buying tax. Okay. So buying tax is 9% on the cadastral value. So every property has a cadastral value, and that is what it's calculated on. So it used to be calculated on the sale price of the property, but that was changed, I think, in late 2010, the mid 2010s or early 2010s, or maybe around then. And it's based, every property is different because the cadastral value is a single number which each property has, and it's an individual thing, kind of like a national insurance number, let's say, for the property. These numbers can change though, depending if you do any work to the property. If you had a bathroom, then the cadastral value will increase because the property value will have increased, because of it. But that is what it's calculated on. It's 9% on that. In general, you're looking at the cheaper the property, the more expensive it will be as a percentage on the cost of the property, or the more expensive the property, it's usually cheaper as a percentage on the sale price.
Okay, I think we just got one for time for one last question. Okay, here's one. Obviously from a British person. let's assume that you have found the property of your dreams and you've booked it in. You said, "I want it." The offer's been accepted. You're flying home. Can you be gazumped? Which means, I don't know if it's a global word. It means it's someone else with a higher offer.
I can't hear you.
Is the can someone come in with a higher offer once your offer has been accepted?
Until you've signed something, there's no guarantee that you're getting the house.
Right.
As in, if you have it in black and white and you've got emails that offer's been accepted, you can't go down the legal route, because legally you can say, well, we actually had an agreement going forwards, for this, but nobody wants to go down a legal route, to be perfectly honest, because you'll never. It's a rabbit. It's a rabbit hole. You'll never be able to get out. So that's why we actually signed the preliminary contracts as soon as possible, to make sure that everybody's happy and that everything is in order, and that both parties are actually bound to this agreement. Because until you have something signed, unfortunately, you can't always go on the word of the seller.
Okay. Well. Okay. Firstly, sorry about the sound problems today, and the vision problems as well. I'm in central London. It should be simple, but anyway, there we go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Corrado. That's all we have time for today. I want to give a final thanks for Corrado and for all your really helpful tips and advice. We do recommend you get in touch with Tuscan Homes directly to discuss your requirements, and you can watch a video again of this over at your leisure. So good luck on your journey to buying in Italy, and we hope to see you there soon. Thank you very much, Corrado.
Thank you very much for everything and for listening to me. I hope it's been helpful. And if you need anything else, you will be able to get my contacts through Chris and his team.
Fantastic. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Ciao, ciao, guys.